Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Discovery Debrief, a podcast that dives headfirst into the proverbial deep end of our favorite spacefaring franchise on the road that ends pretty much now to season 2 of its latest entry, Star Trek Discovery. I'm co-host Chris Clow, and I'm joined by 2 additional members of our bold panel of Star Trek franchise explorers, Rachael Clow.
Hello.
And the triumphant return of Cicero Holmes.
Yes. Hey guys, sorry I missed you guys last time. I was stuck in the mud.
I think we can forgive you for that, especially with such an awesome pun there. Yeah, so last time we got together, which was probably pretty recently considering when you guys are downloading this, we talked about the 3rd episode of the Short Treks subseries that focused on Saru,
Right.
which was called The Brightest Star. And Cicero, since you weren't with us for that, just give us your brief thoughts about this deeper look into the origins of one of your favorite guys on the show.
Well, you know what? This episode, I mean, it spoke to me because this has been what I've been asking for these short treks to be.
Yeah.
Since we started talking about them. Let me get some background into, and we got a little bit of that in the very first one with Tilly, but we really got a sense of who Saru was, who the Kelpians were, the fact that the Kelpians are kelp farmers was a little on the nose for me, but I mean, I but that's what we were here for. We were here for getting these little bits of information about these characters that we knew at least a little, but further bringing more color into the background and bringing more depth to these characters, so that when you go into season 2, even if you're sitting next to someone who didn't watch the short treks, they can watch these and they can watch the episodes and everything is fine with the episodes. But for those people who have watched the short treks, especially when you're looking at Saru, you can say, oh, this is, I've gleaned a little bit more insight as a result of me watching these 15-minute shorts.
Yeah.
So that was cool. The other thing that I'll mention about that episode that was interesting, besides Michelle Yeoh reprising her role as Lieutenant Jojo in that one, but what was really interesting was watching the difference in the intricacies of the makeup between Saru and the rest of the Kelpians. Everyone kind of looked a little bit different, and you could tell, obviously they were from the same species, and you can your narrative, the narrative explanation for it, of course, is they're different people, and and that's how you tell the differences in that species. But obviously the answer was, well, we're going to be using these masks once or twice, as opposed to Saru's that we'll be using for the entirety of a season. So it was really interesting to see the differences in how intricate and how nuanced his makeup job was versus everyone else.
Yeah, that's a good point. And one of the things that Rachael and I talked about when we were discussing that short specifically was just it paints an entirely different perspective on Saru, because you realize, like, you saw that he was kind of ruled by fear, at least in the early going of season 1,
Right.
And then he became braver and a more capable commander. But really the norm for him might be just bravery. And
Right.
I mean, that really sets up the idea that he embraced that hope because the power of it was strong. I mean, he said as much. The power of it was stronger than fear, and he left when there was certainly no easy way to leave everything that he knew behind.
Right.
So, yeah, really good episode. Well, so what have you been up to, man? Since the last time we got together, it's been a little while. What's your life in Trek been like, if anything?
It has been non-existent. The Treks have been to Holiday World, as we explored the end of the year and all of the great family like festivities that come with it. And the other thing has been living on the frozen prison world that Captain Kirk and Spock wound up on. And which one was that? That was
in 2009.
no,
You're talking about Rurapente
yeah,
in Star Trek
Rurapente.
6. Yeah,
Yes,
Chicago is looking a lot like Rurapente.
Yes, that is
Not
correct.
that bad.
It's
not
be.
that bad. It is. It's not that bad yet, but it is. It is fast approaching.
Yeah, it's coming soon. Yeah, I think we got wall to wall snow over the next what's supposed to be Friday and Saturday, and then it'll get into low digits on Sunday. Yeah, it's gonna be.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's gonna be nuts. Nuts and cold. Yeah,
yes.
with a side of cold nuts for some of us. Yeah, well, the only thing that I have to add from last time that I've been up to, I finished Away to the Stars, the Tilly-centric novel.
Oh, nice.
And I really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to the day that we all get to talk about it. We also have to talk about the Saru book. I mean, that's something that has been kind of put on the back burner, and that's my fault because you guys finished it ages ago, and I finished it much later than you did. But yeah, so we got 2 books to talk about. And now the first little bit of news. Well, let's dive into some news.
All right.
So a new Star Trek novel has been announced, a Discovery novel specifically, and it is called The Enterprise War. And the title is very apt because it's going to be all about what the Enterprise was up to during the Klingon War that was depicted in season 1 of Discovery. So clearly that means that the Captain Pike is going to be a main character, that Spock is going to be a main character. They hint at the idea of seeing more of number 1. I mean, she's got a very prominent place aboard the Enterprise in this era of the Star Trek universe. So it's going to be written by John Jackson Miller, who's written both Star Trek and Star Wars novels in the past. And it's going to be coming out this summer. Rachel, What do you think about that? Are you interested in seeing what the Enterprise was up to during that war that you hate?
I sure am.
All right.
All right. Let's get some explanation for this shit.
Well, it's going to be interesting. I think that, maybe this is going to be the first novel that is going to be informed by some of the stuff that we're seeing or that we will see for Pike in season 2. But either way, I mean, getting a greater degree of connection between Pike's Enterprise and what we see on Discovery is always going to be good. Cicero, how does that sound to you?
Oh, I mean, it sounds great. It's I think it's maybe it's not unfortunate, but it's going to be interesting when it finally releases to think back on season 2 and everything that we've seen with the Enterprise and Pike and their connection to Discovery and all the crazy shenanigans that they wind up going through on during season 2, and to tie that all together with what transpired during the war. Mm-hmm. Will be an interesting thing to kind of figure out. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So they did release a synopsis for the book, and it reads as follows: Hearing of the outbreak of hostilities between the United Federation of Planets and the Klingon Empire, Captain Christopher Pike attempts to bring the USS Enterprise home to join in the fight. But in the hellish nebula known as the Pergamum? Yeah, I think so. The stalwart commander instead finds an epic battle of his own, pitting ancient enemies against one another, with not just the Enterprise, but her crew as the spoils of war. Lost and out of contact with Earth for an entire year, Pike and his trusted First Officer Number 1 struggle to find and reunite the ship's crew, all while Science Officer Spock confronts a mystery that puts even his exceptional skills to the test, with more than their own survival possibly riding on the outcome. Well, okay. Well, I guess that means that's actually the first time I've read that synopsis. So maybe that means we're not going to see Enterprise versus Klingons. But also, too, I mean, maybe that's a good thing because a lot of the Federation fleet was quite damaged by the time the war ended. So this might explain why the Enterprise looked like it was generally okay when we met up with it. But either way, I mean, more Pike stuff, especially Pike from Discovery, I think is going to be a good thing. But July 30th. So we have until then to talk about the other 2 books that have come out. So something to look forward to.
Yeah, it's interesting also what they're saying about what's happening. I wonder if we'll see some of the aftermath of what transpired in the book during season 2.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, time will tell. We'll find out hopefully this coming summer, but it's nice to have something else to look forward to on the front of Star Trek when related to the Enterprise. Something else that we've kind of talked about before, just kind of a brief news item. Listener Rob O'Connor brought this to our attention, and then it was picked up by Trek Movie. Netflix internationally has finally added the short treks. So it looks like for some reason they were waiting until they were all finished before they got added. But for those of you in the territories where Netflix is the primary outlet to watch Discovery, you now can catch up with the rest of us and check out those short treks, and I hope you like them. It was a little oh, God.
It was a little hard for you all. Yeah,
a little bit. So now you can finally do that, which is good.
You will be purring.
Oh, man. Yes, very true. Well, another piece of news that we didn't talk about yesterday that is just so typical of Paramount and so typical of people who just don't. It's typical of the outlets that own Star Trek. There's been rumblings that director S.J. Clarkson has accepted another job, which has effectively put the 4th Kelvin Timeline Star Trek film on hold. People have been saying the Kelvin Timeline is canceled. I can't find any evidence of that actually being the case. But kind of disappointing, especially coming off of a movie that was generally solid, if not commercially, not unsuccessful, but mildly successful on Star Trek Beyond. But John Cho, who plays Lieutenant Hikaru Sulu in the Kelvin Timeline films, Entertainment Tonight caught up with him at the Los Angeles Online Film Critics Society Awards, and he said, quote, "To be honest, it's not happening right now as far as I know, but I just think it'll happen. Somebody at some point will all get on the same page and we will do it. That's my belief. Maybe I'm being optimistic. It's just a significant part of American popular culture. I don't see how it goes away forever." Cicero, what do you think about the questionable future of the Kelvin Timeline as it currently stands right now?
Well, the easy answer is this is sad. This is sad news.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like from what John Cho's saying that it's not happening in the foreseeable future. And really no one knows when it's going to happen. It's just a belief that it will.
Yeah.
And that's kind of not enough.
Mm-hmm.
But it's what we're going to have to deal with because that's where we are, and that's kind of disappointing, but
yeah,
it takes a lot. It takes a lot to put a film together. Let's hope. And I think because of the fact that it's kind of the director walked away, let's hope that there is an actual script together and ready to go for a film. And if there isn't, then we may see the Tarantino Star Trek film before we see the next Kelvinverse one.
Oh, good Lord! Yeah, so it's going to be what, 20 years? Who
We're
knows?
not seeing either of those films.
Right.
What do you think, Rach?
I mean, it sounds like it's kind of the Kelvin timeline might be a little bit dead for now.
For now.
Yeah, it could always come back, but
well,
I mean, when he says like something this big can't just go away, I think it's come back on TV in a really big way, and they're really investing in it on TV.
Yeah.
So it's certainly not gone, but you know, in this world of blockbusters and too big to fail movies, everything's got to be a mega hit or it doesn't make them any money.
Yeah, we've talked about that before, that maybe, and Zachy has even mentioned as much, that it's possible they've been pumping too many resources into Star Trek movies with the expectation that they'll do similar kinds of numbers to other big franchise hits like a Marvel movie or a Star Wars movie, and Star Trek has just never carried those kinds of numbers. The closest that it got was probably in 2009, but that was generally an outlier in the entire history. I mean, the thing that I am thinking about right now is that, at least in the direction of the movies, or where the movies specifically are concerned, we're kind of aimless in a way that the Star Trek franchise has not been since 2003, right after Nemesis hit theaters. And, you know, we had no idea what form an 11th Star Trek movie was going to take. Things are obviously different now because, you know, the franchise is, as Rachel just said, roaring back to television in a pretty big way via a streaming service, or streaming services when taken internationally. And that was not the case in the early 2000s when the franchise was on the verge of petering out the last time. But since the late 80s, Star Trek has never just existed on television. You know, like it's always been in a movie theater. Movies were arguably the lifeline of Star Trek, especially through the Kelvin timeline, when we didn't have anything on television to look forward to. And now that situation has reversed itself, which is it's quite a moment in Star Trek franchise history. I'll be interested to see how the franchise recovers when it comes to the big screen exploitations, but it's hard to complain when we have so much television to look forward to. But I mean,
television is the new movies, Chris. So
well, yeah, and you know, and it's funny though, and as we sit here and we kind of lament the maybe, you know, presumptive demise of the cinematic universe for Star Trek, that you know, we forget that Star Trek is unique in its in this way, that it was a television series that became a film franchise.
Yes.
I don't really know of any other pop culture, you know, piece of content that has been able to make that transition in that way.
Yeah, that's true. The other possible examples that you might bring up are not active film series anymore, or maybe they produced one or two movies before petering out, whereas Star Trek has made 13. So
right. The only other one that even is remotely close is Mission Impossible.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, but like, I mean, you know, the funny thing about Mission Impossible is that Mission Impossible, the movies, have only shared the name with the series that bore it basically. Yeah. It's kind of taken a life of its own, whereas the Star Trek films and television shows generally are consistent with each other in some way, shape, or form. They have lots of connective tissue. I wonder if Paramount will sit back and say, well, you know, yes, we would love for it to be a film franchise, but you know, we're not in the space now to spend $200 million on a Star Trek film, because we don't, you know, because it's only going to make us $450 million.
Right. Yeah. And Paramount, right. I mean, there's a lot of corporate turmoil behind the scenes right now when it comes to the question of whether or not Paramount and CBS are going to merge again. and those issues have only been exacerbated ever since it was discovered how much of a scumbag Les Moonves was, or at least widely publicly disseminated how much of a scumbag Les Moonves was. But yeah, there's a lot of balls up in the air, and hopefully we'll see the future of the Star Trek franchise on film again in the next 5 years. But
question to you, Chris, before we move on to the next thing. I'm derailing things.
No.
Welcome back.
What's up?
What do you think, if the film franchise comes back, does it come back with the same cast?
Oh, that's tough.
That's a time question, right?
You know what I'm almost tempted to think, and there's certainly no guarantee that they would do this, but the movies obviously have a bias towards the more popularly long-standing crews of the franchise, right? And we have a brand new Spock in the form of Ethan Peck, and the 23rd century is back in a degree of prominence, and we also have a series of new 23rd century characters. There's wiggle room in the Prime timeline to finish Kirk's original 5-year mission, and whether or not the creative teams behind the franchise would ever want to consider doing something like that, I don't know. I mean, you have the animated series, but there's no guarantee concerning where those episodes exactly take place. I mean, I think they're assigned years, but there's not that many episodes of the animated series, all things considered.
Right.
And if they wanted to recast the TOS crew and tell stories to finish out Kirk's original 5-year mission between the end of TOS and the beginning of the motion picture, then that might be something that they could do. Honestly, I don't see them doing that. That's a very inside baseball kind of a thing to do with Star Trek. But when it comes to growing the franchise, I think anything is possible. So time will tell, as in all things, right? But yeah, well, one last thing, just to get your perspective on Cicero, the Section 31 Georgiou show is confirmed. A producer recently went on record saying that Star Trek's optimism will not be abandoned by the show. On Twitter was Bo-Yeon Kim, who said, "We are not aiming to derail Star Trek's optimism. We will never lose sight of what Star Trek represents." That's what she said.
Okay.
So what do you think of seeing Georgiou Section 31 in a fully dedicated series on CBS All Access?
I love what they can do with that. I mean, I love, I'm of two minds, right? So I love the fact that it's coming because of who is in the cast, because of the production value and the writing chops behind everything that happened in season 1 of Discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it from this aspect. Now they talked about the hope and the optimism, and obviously that does need to stay, because that's fundamental to the universe, fundamental to the UFP and the Federation in general. But I would love to see them kind of Marvel Universe these shows that they have on the service, where and by that I mean when you watch certain movies that you see in the MCU, you know the tone that you're going to get from those films. So you know that, like, the Captain America films are going to be kind of actiony, espionage-y. You know that the Ant-Man films are going to be a little comic book, comedy heist films. Mm-hmm. You know that the Guardians of the Galaxy are going to be your Star Wars analog films, ensemble Star Wars films in the MCU. I would love to see that in the Star Trek universe, where this show is a little bit darker, is a little bit, a little bit more noir, while still keeping the optimism, but giving it its own distinct tonal flavor. Mm-hmm. And I would love to see that the other shows pick up on that and do kind of the same thing. So from one perspective, that's my hope. That's my optimism.
Mm-hmm.
The pessimism is I worry about them saturating their own market and making it implode under its own weight.
Sure.
By continuing to drop more and more shows, and maybe not even drop the shows, but just keep announcing shows. That is something that I think when you look at cinematic universes, I think Star Wars is starting to suffer from that right
mm-hmm.
now, where they were doing these, one a year type of thing, and then they came in and did Solo, and people rejected it, not necessarily because it wasn't good, but because like there was too much, and it's like, all right, enough, give me some time to breathe and give me some time to digest all the Star Wars that you've already given
mm-hmm.
me. So I hope that they don't try to milk the cow before it's made some more
well
milk.
I mean, we could have an entire discussion concerning what went wrong, I guess, with Solo's release. Rachel and I have had a lot of discussions about that, but I mean, the point's taken. Just, we certainly don't want people to be burned out on Star Trek, but at the same time too, we're always talking about ways that we want to maximize the value of CBS All Access. It's something that you talk about quite a bit, Rach. And I'm certainly not going to complain that it's through Star Trek that we're getting that value.
Yeah,
but
we got to start watching all of NCIS.
No. But as long as the shows are good, I mean, that's always the primary sticking point. Obviously, that's a subjective standard, but so far so good. Let's put it that way. But we'll also find out later tonight when we actually do get to watch season 2, the premiere of Discovery.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, that's when we're recording this. But we do have one final short trek to talk about before we all dismiss to absorb that first episode. So let's move along to talking about Short Treks Episode 4, The Escape Artist. So just a quick synopsis. It's not going to be very long just because, well, the episode's not that long. A Tellarite bounty hunter, Tevrin Crit, purchases prisoner Harcourt Fenton Mudd from a female bounty hunter before she beams away and departs. Mudd pleads his innocence, only to have Crit bring up the United Federation of Planets charges against him and reward for his capture. Mudd continues to plead for his freedom, recalling a variety of similar instances he has found himself in with Klingons, Orions, and other aliens. Mudd's pleas unsuccessful, Crit approaches the Federation starship USS de Milo and requests to have the two beamed aboard. I'm going to cut it right there, just because all of it leads up to the finale of this short, which is pretty fascinating. Cicero, your perspectives on Harry Mudd and what we've learned from him and this episode overall.
I would love to see a Three's Company style multi-camera sitcom starring Harry Mudd and all of his exploits and no good Nick shenanigans, because they're delightful. And they were delightful when he was introduced. They were delightful in the episode where he just kept replaying time. And they were delightful again here. And this was probably my favorite short trek, because it did all of the things that I wanted it, that I would have wanted a short trek to do. Give you more about this character that you didn't know a lot about. Give you some tidbits and some insight into their character and how their character is formed, and also give you some things to think about going further into the next season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very well said. Rach, this one, so in the last discussion that you and I had, you alluded to the idea of each short getting better. Does that hold true here? And what are your thoughts on the escape artist?
I felt like this one was the best one yet, but I keep saying that about every one. But this one was just wildly entertaining.
Yeah.
You know, it's a joy to watch Harry Mudd on screen, and the twist at the end was delightful and funny. I would be careful about suggesting ideas for sitcoms because CBS will do it. And you might regret that, Cicero.
Right. I would only regret it because I didn't get created by Chris.
There you go. Yeah. So those royalty checks.
Copyright Cicero.
There we go.
I think that's legally binding.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes,
clearly.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it was just fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Really, Harry Mudd as a character on the surface doesn't look like he's someone you would necessarily be able to stretch out a whole different slathering of stories with. But the depiction of him by Rainn Wilson on Discovery has been really surprising in that regard. I mean, not that I wasn't expecting a lot from seeing Harry Mudd again, and as a big TOS fan, you know, I was very interested in seeing what they would do with him. But I'm very surprised at how effectively the creative team behind Discovery is able to leverage him as an endlessly interesting and fun to watch guy. Rainn Wilson's portrayal is key to that. He brings a great deal of energy and reverent energy, I think, to who Harry Mudd is. It's a lot. I've heard some of the more embedded among Star Trek fans say that it's some sort of rash departure from who Harry Mudd was in the original series. I don't agree with that. It's
whatever with that.
Well, yeah, sure, but I mean, it feels like that's just serving as the foundation for what's being added here, and the sensibilities that come with modern TV demand more from your villains than you had seen before. Not that Mudd was necessarily a huge thorn in the side of the Enterprise and of Captain Kirk, but he was a memorable antagonist for a reason, and I think Discovery is pushing that forward. For a story that is entirely oriented around Mudd's wiliness, this was really fun to watch. It was funny in a lot of interesting places, like particularly when Tevrin Crete was reading the charges against Harry Mudd that the Federation had laid upon him and calling back to episodes of Discovery. I immensely enjoyed this one, and I hope that we at least get one appearance, maybe more, from Harry Mudd this season, but who knows? But the twist, which I didn't talk about in the synopsis yet, but it's revealed that this Mudd is one of many androids that the actual Mudd, having been in disguise as the female bounty hunter, has sold to various bounty hunters, making a tidy profit on to boot. Back on a ship, the real Mudd prepares to sell another android, continuing this scheme. Sets up a great deal of possibility. Rachel, what was your reaction to that twist there at the end?
I think I laughed a lot. I think it was really funny. And I really enjoyed Rainn Wilson in the sort of like female bounty hunter outfit yeah. with like the exaggerated like metal boobs. I thought that was a really funny thing. And I liked him sipping Jippers.
Yeah.
Or whatever a Jipper
is. If I had any money, I'd be sipping Jippers on a beach somewhere.
Yeah. Just the whole thing was really well executed and set up.
Yeah. Excellent. Cicero.
Yes. It was awesome. That was kind of what I was alluding to, this whole, the fact that like, we may never know if the Harry Mudd that we meet on, that we met on the Discovery, the Harry Mudd that was on the Enterprise and TOS, we never know. The one that was on the animated series, was it an android? Was it the actual Harry Mudd? We'll never know. And that's awesome. Yeah. Like Oh man, you know, Harry Mudd, he's got us all. We're just living in his universe, man.
You know, and that was Rainn Wilson actually was in an interview with Sci-Fi where he spoke exactly to that, about whether or not the audience had ever seen the real Mudd. And obviously this is just Rainn Wilson's own perspective. We don't know for sure, but he said, I think we've been seeing the real Harry Mudd throughout. We certainly see him at the end of this episode, but I think it would be fun to have future episodes where you don't know if you're seeing Mudd or a duplicate Mudd running around the universe. That would be really interesting. So yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's nothing to, unless something else comes along that actually confirms that that's the real guy, then we don't know for sure. Maybe, I don't know, maybe one of the Mudd androids pulls a Moriarty and goes sentient and decides to pursue his own criminal aims, and that's the guy that we meet in the original series. But there's really no way to know, and it is part of the fun. And it's in character, you know,
I got the impression that the androids were sort of flimsily made, right? Like you could just pull their limbs off.
Right. So well, Tellarites are pretty strong.
They're discount androids.
Which is also kind of...
Like they just need to last long enough
that's kind of on
trick
brand.
People, so...
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and there was one of the jackets that one of the android Mudds was wearing in at the end of this episode matched a jacket that was worn in I Mudd by the original Harry Mudd. And if you go to the page for the escape artist on Memory Alpha, they picked out a screenshot from I Mudd where Kirk has him up against the wall and he's choking him and he's wearing that jacket. Very distinctive. And is just, it shows that there is a reverence there for the original material, which I always appreciate. But yeah, I mean, it was just fun. If I had to pick a best of the shorts, so Rachel says it's this one. I don't know. Cicero, what do you think is the best one out of the four?
So, man, it really depends on the criteria. So if your criteria is the one that I set forth when we were talking about the original one, which was insight into characters and some tidbits that I can take with me into season 2, that may help to inform how I judge the characters and maybe even the series as a whole, then I think that this one, The Escape Artist, is the best one. From the perspective of what made me feel, it would either be this one or Calypso.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I felt lots of joy and whimsy in this episode, and there was melancholy joy and some whimsy in Calypso.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's very understandable. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what my criteria is necessarily for the best of the shorts, but I think I'm leaning towards The Brightest Star, the episode with Saru, just because it was the one that was probably the most clearly and definitively connected to Discovery as a whole, since it was one of the principal characters.
Sure.
And we got to see Prime Giorgio again, which I hope we get to see more of her at some point somehow. Not that I don't like Mirror Giorgio, I do, but Prime Giorgio is just such a cool character and fits that Starfleet captain mold so effectively, even when she's not being a captain, as we saw in that last episode. But This one was definitely the most fun, and you can't take anything away from that. I had an immensely fun time watching Rainn Wilson get to play Harry Mudd again. He's a good director, too. He directed this episode.
Yeah.
And I think it showed a lot of, like, if you had to try and say, watch the purest Harry Mudd thing you possibly can, it would be this episode. I mean, it has such a unique sense of identity that is so closely associated with the character as we now know him, that I don't know how someone could watch this and not have fun, unless they were, still poking at the Klingons don't look right, or the Tellarites' hair is too long, or something like that. Some of these superficial details, and it was just great. We got to see Orion's again too, which is always cool. So I think there was plenty here for all kinds of Star Trek fans.
Yeah, well, at least for the ones that want to show up.
Right. I mean, that's always going to be the thing. But it'll be interesting to see how season 2 lands with people, and particularly as things start ramping up towards the premiere of Picard. A lot of those holdouts, I kind of think, are going to have to at least take another look at their status as holdouts. But hey, who knows? Maybe I'm being optimistic when it comes to that.
Yeah. That's okay.
Come back under the umbrella, guys. It's fun. Don't stay on the sidelines anymore. It's great to have Star Trek back, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what's coming down the pike. Well, I think that's pretty much all we can say. I can't think of anything else that demands a whole lot of discussion when it comes to this. Cicero, you got any final thoughts on The Escape Artist before we dismiss here?
No, I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad it's over. I'm glad season 2 is about to begin.
Very, very soon, yeah. Rachel, final thoughts before we boldly go again.
I echo those sentiments.
All right.
I'm excited for real episodes.
Well, we don't have much longer to wait. Well, so just to give you guys an idea of what things are going to look like in the near future, we still have to hash out exactly when all 4 of us are going to be getting together, marking the return of Zachy to the panel to actually inaugurate season 2 of Star Trek Discovery for Discovery Debrief, our show. But it will follow, I would imagine, at least before the airing of the second episode. So keep a lookout on your podcast feeds. We're really excited to be able to bring new regular discussions to you related to this series that I think we've all been looking forward to for a long time, ever since the first season ended, obviously. So thank you for coming on the ride with us again. We look forward to bringing a whole new season of discussions to you. But as for right now, that is going to do it for episode 32 of Discovery Debrief. We hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please like and follow us on our social media channels. And if you'd be so kind, we'd also appreciate it if you wrote a review for the show on iTunes or Facebook. It only takes a minute, and we'll be happy to read your review on the air when it's posted. If you have any questions, you can follow the show on Twitter at DSC Debrief, where you can also find all of our individual Twitter handles, and feel free to send us questions through Twitter, our Facebook like page, or by emailing us directly at hailingfrequencies@discoverydebrief.com. Please be sure to set your courses for this feed for future episodes as we prepare to discuss Season 2, finally. As always, though, until we meet again, please go boldly, my friends.